My creator and your creator, the creator of the heavens and the earth, the one who created everything and keeps everything under his control. The message comes from his final revelation, his final communication to human beings in the Quran. In this book, in the 57th chapter, in the 20th verse, and it's just one verse. I'm just sharing one verse with you guys. And this verse is so significant because this verse encapsulates our lives. It speaks about our lives. God says something very powerful. You know what he says? He says, bear in mind that the life of this world is just a game. It's a deception. It's an attraction. It's empty competition. It's competing to see who has more wealth. It's competing to see who has more children. It's competing to see who has more possessions. And this is the reality.
Says who? Says you? I have to ask because iERA does not have a strong track record when it comes to stating the facts, let alone supporting them. Life is ultimately what you make of it. Does having money help? Absolutely. It allows you to live longer and enjoy more of life. Most people don't have this attitude of making money for the sake of making money. Some do, but most don't. How can we tell? If everyone's goal really was just to make as much money as possible, then everyone would be doing overtime wherever it was available, and everyone who could would have a second or third job. But they don't. Why? Because working and gaining money for most people is a means, not an end. You do mention buying new things, but we don't just buy for the sake of buying. If that were the case, then what would be the difference between spending £1,000 on a TV and spending £1,000 on bags of cement dust? It depends on the person, their situation, and their expectations. If they want to watch TV, then the TV will naturally be the better option. If they want to set up a home for their family and need to start on the concrete foundation, then the cement is the way to go. Both of these are objects which allow for different experiences, and these experiences are important because experience is what makes life up. I want to experience so much of the world, different foods, cultures and environments, but I also want the experience of settling down and possibly starting up my own charity, and that is okay. Variety of experience is the flavour of life, and people's taste change as well. So your remarks seem ignorant to the diversity of human nature.
People, this is the reality. We wake up every morning. We wake up and we go back to the rat race. We go back to the 9 to 5. We go back to our works to do what? To make more money. To make more money. To buy more things. And God is telling us this.
Then I am sorry, but your proposed deity is very clearly wrong. I have never worked to the 9 to 5 schedule. I have managed to secure an alternative means of income which allows me to structure my day to my needs. The only time this was not the case was when I was working at Support You, an LGBT+ support charity, which by the way, I did so full-time for a year without payment. Now, this wasn't some quasi-charity like iERA, which pays its employees to lie to the public in order to receive some cosmic pat on the back from some unproven deity. This was an actual charity designed to help people for the sake of helping people. I find it highly dubious of you to condemn others for racing one another over children and money, whilst you yourself take part in the theistic pissing contest. That is to say, this race to see who can concoct the best misinformation to deceive the most people. I'm reminded of the times where I see the phrase secular education and I chuckle, asking myself, what other kind is there? Education teaches us how to obtain the facts, whilst religion teaches us how to ignore them. Therefore, education is secular by nature.
And listen to this, and then he gives us a powerful analogy. This is one of the most beautiful analogies. Really pay attention. Listen to what he says. He says the parable of this life is like the plants which sprout, which grow when rain falls on them, and the plants that flourish. Imagine, just before summer, you buy some seeds, you plant the seeds in the ground, and as the rain falls and summer comes, the sun shines, these seeds sprout, the plants come out of the ground, and the plants flourish, and they open up, and you see the petals in all of their varying colors, and they're beautiful. God says they're pleasing to the sower, the one that sows these seeds. And then what happens? But slowly, as time passes, the plant withers. God says it shrinks, it shrivels, it dries, it becomes yellow, and the wind comes and dissipates the plant, and it disappears as if it never existed. Brothers and sisters and friends, this is the reality of life. This analogy applies to our life, not only with what's within our lives, but of our lives.
Of course, our lives are like a candle in the wind. All the world's a stage, and in the end, everything withers away like a flower. So what? Does the fact that it will fade take away the warm glow of the candle? Does the reality of the curtain falling make the play to which we have both laughed and cried any less meaningful to our lives? Does the realization that a flower will ultimately return to the soil for a new generation steal from its blooming glory? No. It only offers all the more reason to remember the past, celebrate the moment, and await the future. Something without end, no matter how good, can only become torture.
Let me give you an example. Think about this. You want to buy something. Say you want to buy a Lamborghini, yeah? The American dream. You want to buy a big car, a Lamborghini or a Ferrari. You work hard to buy this car. You finally end up with the money you need to buy this car. You buy the car. The first day or 2 days, it's pleasing, it's amazing. You're surprised, you can't get enough of it. You keep looking at it. You're so chuffed. You have that dream car. But a couple of weeks later, a couple of days later maybe, a couple of months later, it's just a car. It's just a piece of metal. And then you want another car, maybe the Bugatti. You want another car. Maybe a car made of gold next. We keep wanting things, and this is the reality. That desire you had for that car shrivels. It dissipates. It disappears. And that applies to our life too.
Except this is not applicable in all cases. Merely possible. Buyer's remorse happens. It's a shame. Oh well. Some people still own their first cars because of the deep attachment and appreciation they have for the freedom it gave them. The same is true for many people with sports cars who continue to pay maintenance and insurance costs beyond that of just a bit of metal. However, do you want to know the real irony in what you say? Your description of the car owner is closer to your perspective on life. As a non-believer and a secular humanist, I am more than content with this life that I know I have. The people I love and the experiences I share with them dominate my view. Meanwhile, you are willing to give up that life on the minuscule chance that you may receive a better one when you die. Therefore, your analogy here seems to be founded in a heavy dose of projection alongside your continued ignorance of human diversity.
Think about our lives. We're born, we grow, we become strong, we start working, we become 20, 25, 30. We're in the prime of our lives. We reach the prime of our lives, and we think we're invincible. We think we're invincible. We think, and ignore the distractions. This is important. This is your creator. We've become complacent, and then slowly our lives get to the age of 40, 50, 60, and they dissipate. They dissipate. We become wrinkled. We become old. We get diseases. We get diabetes, blood pressure. We suffer from Alzheimer's. We end up in old age homes. We end up in hospitals. This is our reality. We're all gonna die, and there's gonna be a means to our death. Something's gonna happen to us which leads to our death. either blood pressure, either diabetes, or either some other disease, maybe a heart attack, but we're all gonna die. Our lives shrivel too. And back to that analogy, God is telling you, reflect over your lives. They start off like this plant, this seed, which grows and it flourishes, and then over time it dissipates. Over time it disappears. Over time the wind blows it away and it becomes nothing.
I realise that an appeal to emotion comes as second nature to an apologist, whether Hindu, Christian or Islamic, but I can't help but feel depressed over the entire scenario. The idea that we should waste portions of the one life we know we have because it is short screams tragedy. As an ex-believer who once followed Christianity because of such a fear, I cannot block out the feeling of sorrow whenever I hear it. I don't view you in anger. Instead, I see you for what you really are. The small child cowering in the corner with their hands over their eyes, too frightened to move, too afraid to live. It really is heart-wrenching.
And then God reminds us of a real reality that's coming. The reality of the hereafter. God says there is a terrible punishment coming. There is a terrible punishment coming for those who reject the Creator, for those who turn away from the Creator, for those who make this life, make their desires their God. Make their desires their God.
Tell me, who will hold judgment over Allah for his absolute incompetence in creating such a system? If Allah is truly just, then surely they must realize that judging people to eternal damnation for guessing wrong on a topic where they have been supplied insufficient evidence the correct way is an injustice in of itself. What is more is that said injustice would be infinitely worse than any crime imaginable. To torture the innocent not only for a day or for a lifetime, but all eternity is an action without compassion. Surely, from this, we can conclude that the only course of action for Allah would be self-destruction, if that were possible.
I don't want to worship God. I'm a free person. I want to go drink. I want to go fornicate. I want to do all of these things. I want to fulfill my desires. God's telling you there is a punishment for these people, but at the same time, God says there is a forgiveness and acceptance from God. There's an acceptance from God for those who turn to God, for those who wake up, for those who realize what their purpose is, who wake up to their true purpose, who realize that there was a point I never existed. There was a point I never existed. 20, 30, 40 years ago, maybe 50 years ago, none of us existed. There was a point, and this is, I'll address you, madam. There was a point where we were a drop of fluid. We were a drop of fluid, every single one of us. We had no control over that drop of fluid developing into you and you and you. We had no control over our development. We had no control. God created us, He sustained us, He grew us. So God is telling us, those who turn back to Him and worship Him and realize reality, realize that this life is a destruction, realize this life is temporary, realize that we're going to go back to Him. For them, there's eternal paradise, there's peace, there's tranquility. And God finishes this verse. And this is just one verse. This is just one verse. God finishes by reminding us again. He says, remember, the world of this life is just an illusory pleasure. It's a distraction. There's nothing real about it. And your lives are a testament to this. Your lives are a testament.
And here we see the complete lack of ethicity as well as intelligence in what you describe. First of all, to judge someone based on who they follow as opposed to the principles they abide to means that a person can be most just and yet still receive eternal torture for having it down to the wrong name. Meanwhile, a person can be most cruel and yet be given a free pass on the basis that at the end they held to the right name. As for the intelligence behind such a system, you are evidence that it fails. Your devotion to what you perceive as right is not on the basis that you feel morally inclined one way or the other. Rather, as you yourself have declared, it only exists out of self-preservation. If we were to view life as a social experiment designed by God, He has destroyed it by introducing demand characteristics in form of the Quran. Allah is therefore measuring your will to survive, not your desire to be a good person or your actual desire to follow them.
Think about it. Think about your own lives, every single one of you. Throughout life, we want things, we want material things. As children, we cry for toys. As children, we cry for toys and sweets. When we get older, we want to get married and have friends. And when we get older, we want houses, we want cars. We want to feel settled, we want to feel established. We want that high-paying job. But when we get these things, it's empty. A few weeks or months later, we want something else. And then we want something else. And this is the reality of all of our lives. This is the reality of all of our lives. We're never satisfied. Why? Because God tells us in this book, and I end on this, He tells us why He created us. He created us to worship Him. He created us to turn back to Him.
So in concluding, we find that your arguments amount to little more than an appeal to emotion based on a severely reductionist perspective of human nature. You fabricate a few hypothetical scenarios which do not stand true in the majority of instances and repeatedly assert them as verifying some vague and ultimately cliché point found in the Quran. To say that such an argument leaves a lot to be desired would be a terrible understatement. There are a few things which I'd just like to add here at the end of this video. The first is a massive thank you to everyone who has donated to me via Patreon. Your fantastic support has given me the ability to keep this channel going, and I hope to continue producing content in the years to come. Secondly, I would like to thank anyone who has ever interacted with this channel. Your shares, likes and dislikes, as well as your comments of both approval and disapproval, have ensured constant feedback, allowing me to improve my work. Last of all, I'd like to express my desire that you treat any of the people displayed throughout the video with respect. Whilst it is true that ideas do not demand respect, and there are many in fact which deserve reprehension, we must be careful on how we tackle said ideas in ensuring we are not simply targeting the person. In short, be the compassionate side of reason. So take care, and I'll see you next time.